Well, I'm so excited to have this conversation with you guys as people in the retreat making field and see what we explore, see what insights we bring up. So before we start the conversation, I'd love for each of us to take some time to introduce ourselves and answer why you would be asked to be on a panel about retreats. Michael, why don't you start?
Yeah, why not? Michael Kline. I live in Sarasota, Florida, with my husband Sal of 34 years. We've been together, and I've been hosting events, training and retreat events for about 10 years. I was in much more corporate work before that, and I've been serving on Jack Canfield's faculty for several years and has trained the trainer programs, and so those are a little bit bigger events. And last year we invested in this retreat center in Costa Rica called Consmania, and really wanting to do more and more deeper transformational work with 7-day retreats. So we've been exploring new ways of doing that and creating a different product for retreat leaders. So that's my experience. And the work I do, most of my work is teaching RIM, which is a transformational emotional processing system technique that I teach to coaches and therapists and retreat leaders. So that's my interest in the transformational work, and doing it in this space is my passion. That's my story for now.
Yay, thank you so much, Mike. And Harry, please introduce yourself and share why you would be on a panel about retreats.
Thank you, Will. And I want to know where Michael is. Are you really in a tropical place, or is that backdrop fake?
I'm at home in Sarasota, and it's a real backdrop. This is our pool at Consmania in Costa Rica.
Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? I'm calling from Easton Mountain, where it's cold and rainy. And I think I began participating in retreats when I was 48 years old, 35 years ago. I was a drunk until I was 47, and I got sober. And I was living in California, and I sought out retreats that would help for my own personal growth. I went to a number of them, and then I kind of grew up and took responsibility for my own leadership, and I helped create a men's organization in California, and we put on retreats every year. And we had our own men's group, which also had retreats twice a year for just this small group. So I was doing it for my own personal growth before I started putting them on for other people. How's that?
Wonderful. Thanks, Harry. And I'll share. My name is Will Fisher. I'm based in San Diego, California. I do spiritual-based life coaching and also executive coaching. And I have started doing personal one-on-one retreats this year. And I'm about to produce my first group retreat. The first one I'm producing in California this August. I'm the former executive director of Easton Mountain. And so when I was there, living there, I was helping to produce a lot of retreats and facilitate a lot of retreats. And so it is certainly a passion of mine as well. And one that I'm excited to bring into my life out on the West Coast now soon. So great. Well, thanks so much for sharing, guys. And I think where we'll start the conversation is, why retreats? What is the power of retreats?
Well, as far as I'm familiar with men's retreats. And I just shared with John in our breakout group that when I was in the men's group in California, one of our members said something that stuck with me. And this goes for anybody, really. He said, something happens to men at night. And something happens when you're together with someone all day and you have dinner and you don't have to go home. You hang out with each other. The business is over. And often we sat looking at a fire. That's all we did. And you would say, well, what are they doing? And I said, we're looking at a fire. Men like to watch a fire. That's the whole activity. And then you wake up, and then if you have another night, the possibility and the invitation is to go deeper with each other. It seems to be the level of depth is incremental, or is exponential to the hours that you spend together. So we know if you spend a week with a group of people, they don't want to go home. I don't want to go home. This space that we have created and this energy is full of trust and full of vulnerability and full of kind of a joy that we have of being together. And it's created, it's a matter of time. And of course, the program is generally designed to make that happen. What do you think, Michael?
Yes, and I love everything you just said. I call it the linger circle.
Yes.
So we used to talk about linger longer is the invitation after a meal to just linger longer. And then, we don't need to have a formal talking piece, passing formal circle or sharing circle every night, but we do want that lingering. So I call it the linger circle. And it might be multiple groups gathering, if some might be in the pool, some may around a fire, but to create the safe and sacred space. I think what you're talking about is so huge, Harry. Like mostly like at Huntsmania here, we only do 7-day retreats. And in a lot of our Breakthrough to Success and Train the Trainer programs with Canfield, they're 5 and 6 days. Some of them are 7 days. And we call day 3 moving day, because what we find is it just takes that long. The magic happens on day 3. And I also know that's when, if anyone's ever going to have a massive breakdown, which is the bigger the breakdown, the bigger the breakthrough, they happen on day 3.
That's right.
And so we're prepared for that. We call it moving day. Like, I don't know, my husband's a golfer. So on day 3 of a golf tournament, that's moving day. The leaderboard completely changes. Same in retreats. So the longer the better.
Wall.
Yeah, it's excellent.
You hit the wall.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you only have a weekend, like 2 nights, you go home before the wall happens.
That often happens. That happens a lot. Yeah. So I'm here for the deep work. I want the deepest work possible. So what does that mean, and how do we get there? That takes a more safe and a more sacred space to make that happen, which often means less content at a slower pace, to allow people the time to take a bite, to integrate, to just be together and to be in that space and be in control of their own experience, and the safety builds faster. And so we follow and we teach gradients of safety. How do we get from one step to the next step, slowly and gently and easily? We'll start in the shallow end of the pool with little floaties on our arms, and we'll be going off the high dive by apparently day 3.
Well, we'll bring something to a retreat that I learned from, and I'm not famous for, and it's about having fun. So there's a seriousness of a retreat, and there's also the ability of guys, that's who we work with, to have fun and be goofy. And Will is an expert about that. Do you want to say something about that, Will?
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you, first of all, for that acknowledgement. And just before I jump into that, to reflect back, what I am really present to is this container, right? And this is a bit of a buzzword, but it's such an important part about a retreat, is that you create this container, this week, that folks are committed to be in this container. And then within that container, there is a co-creation that happens, and the programming supports that co-creation, and the energy builds and shifts and plays. And so I just want to acknowledge that. And then in terms of playfulness, and yes, it is, especially for men. I feel like so many men have this idea that men need to be serious and need to be stoic. And so I like to shake that idea up. Will was my drag designer. Did you say it? Yes, I was. A drag is a wonderful access to play, right? So I love using drag. I love using games. I love using silly competitions and activities that support people, men specifically, to connect with their playful energy, to their playful spirit. And what I find is that play is a really beautifully connecting energy, that when you are in that element of play, when you're laughing, when you're giggling, when you're having fun, you let your walls down. And so it's often a opportunity for connection and for getting out of the ways that we generally present ourselves, right? It shakes it up because, you know, when you're acting a fool, you've let go a bit of that idea that people need to see you in a certain way. So that's why I bring play into retreats.
Well, one of the ways we play, I worked for many years for the Body Electric workshop or the school, and I did a lot of workshops. And one of the things that we add or they add to this whole thing about retreats is the erotic element, which is absent from most group. And when I was working with straight men in Northern California, that wasn't even present. And it was there. It's always underneath, but we want to avoid that, and the Body Electric doesn't avoid it. So it combines this sense of a safe container, and there's always in a lengthy retreat some erotic ritual or play happen every day, and that accesses a whole level of our consciousness that is most often left out of other retreats.
Yeah, and I think there's also an intentionality piece that we might speak to around retreats, right? So with a Body Electric retreat, there is often an intention to really welcome and harness that erotic energy. And then there may be some retreats that are for LGBTQ men, where it serves us to invite that to not be a part of the equation, right? Because there are so many times where us LGBTQ men have been sexualized, or we feel that pressure to find the hottest guy to fuck or whatever. And so to remove that part of the equation so that men are just connecting in this heart level that's desexualized is another possible intention that can be brought. Any other thoughts on intentionality with retreats?
I think that's everything. To a lot of we spend a lot of time interviewing our avatar. So we design one person who we're speaking to when we're creating the retreat. That one ideal person that most would benefit from the work we're doing, and then we interview that avatar and get really into their feelings about how they feel about everything, so that we design our intention around a real promise that speaks to the people who say yes to the retreat. It's a big part of the marketing as well, so that we're very clear on what we're offering and that we're inviting the people that it's a match for, and then we follow that intention. And of course, what shows up in the space is what shows up in the space. But I think the intention is critical, that we have to have play to get, that's part of the safety equation, right? We have to have the play, we have our content. And then I think that each participant sets their intention. In my experience, what I do is I said everyone sets their intention on day one, on arrival. That's part of our arriving fire ceremony, is to share those intentions either aloud or just with the fire, but to get clear on that. And then they'll shift throughout the week, and that's okay. And then compare and reflect at the end of the week. But I think intention is so critical. And I don't work with, not that I don't or won't, I'm looking forward to it. I have not worked with gay men's groups. I work with, I've had lots of groups where they've been exclusively women, and groups most of my groups are mixed. And sex is always a conversation, and we start with our agreements. Like sometimes we have the agreements of no new sex this week, or no alcohol, or no whatever it is that their numbing agent is, and what is their commitment and why, and what they want to do about that. So I think the intention's critical long before you start the retreat. I think it's a part of the creation of it.
I agree with you about intentionality. And the first retreat I ever did on my own was in 2000. I was living in California, and I rented a retreat center in the Catskill Mountains. Easton wasn't up and running then. And it was called Coaching for Life. And it was a 9-day retreat. The first 2 days were optional. The last 2 days were optional. And the 5 in the middle were not optional. and everybody came to the whole 9 days,
Wow.
signed up, and there were 12 men who came. And the first agreement that we made was there will be no sex happening during these 9 days, because of what Will said. Sometimes it's a good idea to set that aside, so we're not trying to find a boyfriend for
Right.
for the week that we're together. And the first 2 days were about the Enneagram and personality classification. Then came the retreat, and the last 2 days were an exploration into the philosophy or psychology of who you are. We had a chance to figure out our personal identity during that time. And everybody stayed for the whole time, and there was no sex during that time. However, there was a lot of conversation about it. So that was really a good thing. It's really healthy to talk about what's going on underneath, and what our attitudes towards each other are. And everybody found it very refreshing that they were able to look at each other without that filter of, or am I attracted to you or am I not attracted to you?
Yeah.
So I appreciate that as a way of going.
Mhm. Great. And there's a couple questions here around safety. So why don't we segue into that? And yeah, folks, feel free to throw questions in, or we will have a Q&A at the very end. So you can also save them, but if they come up as we're having the conversation, that's fine
What does
too.
that mean? A question about safety.
So the question is, so this person says, this was Alex, says the idea of safety was mentioned. I have been to a retreat that did not feel safe at all. How can we as organizers make participants feel safe?
Well, first of all, safety isn't a feeling, it's a choice. When you walk into a place and you say, is this place safe or not safe? You know the answer. And if it's not safe, you leave. And if your decision is a result of a lot of factors that come together. For example, you look through information and you get information about if it's Easton Mountain, that's what I know about. And then you call them, or you get their literature, and then you register, and then you do this and you do this and you do this. You've made a lot of decisions, and then you get here and you look around, and the first day you're here, most people make the decision that this is a safe place, and you may feel uncomfortable. That's likely. You're in a room and you don't know anybody. I would feel uncomfortable, but I would have made the decision. These people, meaning the Easton Mountain staff or whatever they are, should know what they're doing. And it's likely that I could trust them rather than not trust them. And at Easton Mountain, we ask that people make an agreement that Will is familiar with, that you first of all make a choice to take care of yourself, and then that you make a choice to help take care of somebody else when you're taken care of. And I can see where in our tight structure, it's possible that some man or woman may give a workshop where it's not safe. People have had that experience, and we have gotten that feedback. That's always a possibility in a revolving multi-activities that we have. I don't know, what do you think, Michael?
More yes, and it's so right on. I think there's a lot of components. So if I could get a little bit more linear, even process oriented, I would say our safety begins with the intention and developing the avatar, so that we know that we're inviting the right people for the right retreat. When they
say
apply,
a little bit more about, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
That's
I'm
all
not clear. Developing the avatar.
Yeah, I would like to hear that too.
Yeah, so my avatar might be a 51-year-old woman named Barbara who used to work as a corporate trainer and left corporate and became a life coach, right? So I'm not finding a niche, I'm finding a person. So if we're speaking to a 55-year-old gay man who likes yoga and is in corporate and is exasperated and frustrated with his life, and is single and has been single all along, or whatever, we get really into his head and know exactly how he feels about everything. So we're not just getting demographics, we're getting the psychographics, and in a deep way. So when we go
just to
through,
clarify, Michael, so this is from a marketing perspective, this is from a planning perspective, that you're planning it around the avatar you would have.
So now we identify what is this, if we really know this one person, not a niche, and not a niche within a niche. I mean, those things are good, but this is only speaking to one person. And what I've learned is this gets us so crystal clear in our messaging that then it appeals to everybody. We're not excluding everybody that isn't that avatar, but what gets us really clear in our message. Because in our design for marketing, we tend to say, well, it could be good for this. No, this would be good for all men, straight men. It's going to be good for, this is a gay men's retreat, but it would be good for couples or for singles, or it would be good for, so we don't want to exclude anyone that could help fill the retreat. And yet if we speak to our avatar and it's a single gay man over 50, we know everything about him. It'll still appeal to guys in their 30 and that are 70, and it'll still appeal to couples if it does or doesn't. So we don't exclude anyone. So my sales copy never describes anything for any demographic, but it gets us clear on our intention. And that builds safety because we know what that person wants. We know what their pain points are and what we're promising to help heal. If we're healing sexual trauma, if that's bound to come up, then that plays into our guidelines and agreements about sex during the week, right? Which segues right into arrival. Well, even our pre-arrival Zoom call starts to build safety, and our pre-arrival conversations. So mine are by application. So I have a history, I have their ACE scores, I know about if there's any mental health issues or meds that people are on. I ask those for if I'm doing RIM work, because there are certain people with certain mental illnesses that this is contraindicated for. It could be dangerous. So we have to screen. So it depends how deep you go, but everything you do is an opportunity to build trust and safety, right? And on site, I would say that our first opening circle is passing a talking piece and letting everyone have as much time and space as they want to share and to be heard and completely unjudged about anything, and to model it first. So if the host team models that, then people will go deeper and do gentle exercises of, like, most people don't want to share to a whole group. You just put us in breakout rooms with one other person. Almost everybody that would show up at a retreat is comfortable sharing with one person or two people. And so we only share people with a pair, and then to get two pairs together, share with four. And by the end of the first day, everyone's willing to share with the whole group. Right? So those are gradients of safety as an example. And to start with easy questions, we did this at the retreat with the story night. We started with an easy question and got to a little bit more complex question, a little bit deeper, and a little bit deeper. So that's what I mean by starting at the shallow end of the pool. And because trust, in addition to everything that you said, Harry, I would say trust is learned and built through experience. So if we make and keep a promise, we've built a little trust. If we extend trust, we build a little trust. So if we have a series of kept promises on arrival, that's really important. If dinner is on time when it's going to be dinner, if it's not, nobody's offended, but it starts to erode. Like, do you really know what you're doing here, right? The detail, I was those little stickler details matter. So we have a logistics queen that takes care of all of those details. That's a real detailed person, so that we build every little thing that we do builds trust.
Yeah, I love this. And really, I like to circle it back to Harry's thought of you choose safety. And so a lot of what you're describing, Michael, is supporting people to continue to choose that I am safe, right? When dinner happens on time, they say, oh, it happened on time. They did what they said they were going to do. I'm safe. I can stay here. When we scaffold the stakes of our questions, of our groups, of the exposure that people experience by, starting with pairs and then getting bigger, we're helping them continue to choose, I am safe, right? So we're being intentional around how uncomfortable we might make them, right? Because they're, in most transformational events, we do have an intention, or I'll speak for myself, of making people uncomfortable, because that's where the growth edge is. And we need to do that very mindfully so that they continue choosing, I am safe, I am safe, I am safe, instead of finding themselves so uncomfortable that then they choose, I'm not safe.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not running a Ritz-Carlton. I'm not here for your comfort. And I tell people that. It's like, well, I'm very uncomfortable with this. It's like, oh, that's good. So just welcome the uncomfort. That's what we're here for. And if dinner is not on time, don't get me wrong. I love the flow, because learning to let go of the need for control is huge. So
Yeah.
maybe dinner is 6 o'clock Pura Vida time, So, but they know, I think the thing is to make and keep promises that we may or may not be eating about this time or that time. If you need a snack, let me know. We'll take care of you. So that if it's going to be real lackadaisical, that's part of the promise, right?
So, yeah, Gary's mentioning trust plus safety, or trust equals safety. I'd say it's trust helps cultivate the choice that I am safe. That's how I would say it. And I will share, something that has supported groups I've led in the past has been agreement making, right? And so, Harry mentioned one agreement that happens. I often like, especially with small groups or all sizes, to create this space for the group to do that process, right? So I have some that I, definitely want them to bring into it, but I don't necessarily tell them that up front. I ask them, like, what is the kind of space that you want to co-create this weekend or this week? And then what are the agreements that we can get behind that are going to support us to create that space? And so then those agreements come from the people, rather than them feeling like we've put some rules and some, restrictions on them. They have decided those themselves and are committed to them. And, a lot of them end up being things like, what is shared here remains here, or that we're going to be mindful of how much space we take up in the room. We're going to speak from our own personal experience rather than saying you, or, projecting our experience onto other people. So those are some of the standards. Any other thoughts on that?
I'd like to throw in when those agreements happen. For a 7-day retreat, I usually plan on spending about 90 minutes to go over guidelines and agreements. By the time we get through explaining and talking about how we're going to be together, and letting everyone else expand on that, and opt in or not. And part of that is where a facilitator, I often hear a speaker say, this is a safe place. They announce it like they just declared it, which to me immediately says this is not a safe place. It's modeling how not to create safety. It's like, please don't do that. If you've ever heard someone say that, it's like, I want you to know this is a safe place. They mean well. And it's the opposite. It's like to say, I want to invite in safety here. I want everyone to feel safe. That's our intention, is to create a safe place. What will it take to make that happen for you? Right? Safety is not something we declare. It's not a policy. It's something that gets created. And I think the trust is built. And like you said, Harry, I wrote that down. It's so good that safety is a decision. So if we create the container well, then chances are everyone at your retreat is going to feel safe, but they have to choose it and create it. And there will be times when they don't feel safe. And so that's our invitation to use our mad skills to work with that. And it's probably just a discomfort showing up, and it makes them not feel safe, and we'll create the safety and process through the discomfort.
So as
go ahead.
Will mentioned, at Easton Mountain, we have a lot of agreements that we ask people to make on the first night that we are together. And we have, the list gets longer as we are here, because people have concerns. And it got tedious for us to just go down this list. So one of our members created a video in which we turn that on. It's like when you board an airline, there's a video to watch. And it's funny, and it gets a lot of laughs, and it includes everything from confidentiality, as Will mentioned, being a sex positive place, how and when and where you engage in erotic activity needs to be considered, the use of telephones, talking in your room loud at night, on and on. And it's necessary to go through that. So we try to think of everything that could possibly happen. So in the realm of the average experience, something will not come up that we haven't covered.
Mm.
And that's why the list gets longer. Uh, and it has to do with food service and sleeping and coming to events or not coming to events. Which events do we want you to definitely come to? And then at Easton Mountains retreats, for those of you who may not know this, our flagship events are based on choice. You can go to as many or as few events as you choose. So you're not starting and everybody's going to do the same thing. There's some weekends that we have where that happens. We all start together, we do everything together and finish together. But we have found since we started this place that people prefer to be at choice about what they do or don't do. And in the last 10 years, what we discovered is that men are tired and they want to come and relax. In our first 10 years, men wanted to basically to come and have deep transpersonal experiences. And that desire has lessened the more it seems we have become busy and we need a rest. So you can go and sit by the pool if you like for an afternoon. You don't have to go to anything. And we find that works for our general public, but we still find ways to offer that other what would be called intensive experiences.
Yeah, so actually that brings up another question I had prepared, which is finding that balance between structure and freedom, so that people do have the spaciousness to have those organic connections and experiences, but that there's the shared experience too, that you don't just, someone doesn't show up and then they're like lost in the woods for 3 days and then they leave.
Yeah.
So one strategy, what I'm hearing you say, Harry, is that creating more optional things, like really making a schedule that is optional so people pick and choose, similar to the experience that people had at the Gay Coaches Conference. What are some other thoughts on striking that balance between freedom and structure?
Well, we have a small group factor in all our long workshops. So, and it's a requirement which is expressed as a suggestion that we really want you to come to a small group. And this has been one of the more significant experiences that men comment on after they leave, that this was an important factor of their ability to process everything, was to meet with a small group for an hour every day. And we ask people if they don't come, that they let us know. So at every moment of once a day, at least, we know where everyone is. And if you're not there, then we will have to come look for you. So we want to, in that way, we want to take care of everybody and be aware of the level of participation, so that someone doesn't get lost out in the woods. That's really would not be a good thing. And to my knowledge, that has never happened. And I guess if we were doing an intensive, that would be a requirement that everybody goes to a small group also every day. Yeah, I think it's a very useful tool. What do you think, Michael?
I think you're right. And the option for downtime, I would tie it back to arriving intentions, and coaching each individual about their intentions, so that if they want to go sit by the pool for an afternoon, are they going to do that and get lost scrolling on their phone, or reading a book, or sitting by the pool in a mindful way? So what do they want that downtime to look like? Would they rather walk on the beach in silence by themselves, or in silence with a group? We often walk a 10-minute walk down to our beach and maybe do a sunrise meditation on the beach and walk back to breakfast in silence, is a different experience than just walking and being social. And so even if you're doing your alone time, to do it intentionally is the invitation. that I would share with them. And then to experience doing less. Like we could create we do a workshop that teaches and rewards doing less, because all their lives, men have been taught to, protect and earn, and to accomplish something is the only thing we're rewarded for. So we do a beach meditation where we call it a beach cleanup. And every morning the ocean gives us, or every high tide, the ocean gives us a gift of plastic water bottles with Japanese and Chinese labels on them. They just wash up all the way across the Pacific. So, and our little nook just happens to collect these. So people really want to do a beach cleanup. And so we carry down there with the baskets, and they can't wait to go clean up the beach. And then we do the exercise is we have them sit down to do a meditation on the beach. And you get your 1 square foot of sand in front of you. And your beach cleanup is just to spend time with 1 square foot. That is your limit of your responsibility today, to clean up 1 square foot. And they say there's nothing on it. And then they discover, we teach about microplastics. And we stay until, as a whole group, that we fill up 1 16-ounce tumbler filled with microplastics. Takes a while as a group, because this is what the turtle sanctuary down the street says we need to do most. This is getting ingested with the baby turtles. So just take care of microplastics in 1 square foot. As a reward, you can fill up a whole bin full of Chinese water bottles. But you can't fill up more than just your basket. People always want to grab a couple more, tuck under their arm. And leave it. It's not your responsibility. You can't clean up the whole world. That is not your job. You've got your square foot, you had your little bonus, and they come back just astonished and reflecting on that, how it felt to leave trash behind that they could have carried out, or to not be able to do more, and to just really be with that, because that's how they that's how they work with their children, it's how they work with their employees, their clients. You take on too much responsibility.
Yes.
You don't have to. So teaching to do less and rewarding doing less is not experienced in our culture. So there are ways of creating events that, and then it doesn't feel like, not like intense work events, it's downtime events. And now go intentionally sit by the pool without a beer, or a book or anything else.
When we get to a place, we're going to be ourselves, and do what we usually do. And we have your support to do something else. And that is so out of it that it works. It's like what you get people to do is like, if they think about it, it won't help. Right. They just have to do it. And for those of you who were here for the Gay Coaches Conference, and I would give $1 million if we had an ocean. We do have
such a deal I have for you.
Yeah, you have an ocean. It's like, wow, half your job is done. The ocean. We have a mountain, so our mountain does that work of influencing you. Yeah, but an ocean, wow.
Yeah, that's actually where I wanted to go next, which is the importance of space. What I love, and look at that. That's the Nook. That's amazing, Mike.
That's our sunrise beach meditation.
Right?
I mean, we could talk about hosting the conference there.
Yeah.
It is an international
transformation.
Yeah. So I love that story that I hear highlights the use of space, really being mindful of where we're doing this retreat and how the space itself can impact our experience, and how we can impact the space in a beautiful way, like you just described. And I remember, Harry, there's that video that we made for Arts in the Woods where it starts with you describing how people arrive and they come around the corner of Easton and they get to the retreat and something changes. I believe that was, did I misquote you?
Yeah, they say something happened coming down the road. Something happened to me. So I think, oh, it wasn't us. It already happened. It's this mountain and the environment. It's so interesting that it relieves us of so much responsibility to make something happen for somebody, that some other force power is at work.
It's never us.
Yeah.
It's like, I've never met an effective coach who thinks it's them, right? It's not, so it's just more so with retreats. It's never us. It feels like we have more responsibility, and we don't. It's create
I want to say to the men on this call that one of the first retreats I did when I was living in Northern California was I figured out what I needed or what I wanted. And what I didn't know about was self-pleasure. And I was so embarrassed about it or whatever. So I had a living room and a 3-bedroom house, and I created a workshop for 12 men called 48 Hours of Self-Pleasure. And that's all we did. And we didn't touch each other. We only touched ourselves. And there were various modules like one-on-one, two-on-one, that kind of thing. But if you guys want to do a retreat and you don't want to go through all this thing about hiring a place, and you have an apartment.
Mm.
You could do a retreat in your apartment. If you had a living room, you could do a retreat. They could sleep on the floor, get up and have breakfast, and you could charge them $20 or $100 or whatever it is about something that you really are juiced about in your own life. And so we don't have to think I don't have the money to go away and do a retreat. We have, if you have a backyard,
Yeah.
whatever your home is like.
Yeah, or 750 or 1,000 or yeah, and that's Harry. Yeah, I love that. And I'm curious about this 48 hours. Was it 48 hours straight of self-pleasure or 48 hours over a period of time?
Oh, it was over 2 nights.
Oh,
Friday,
wow. Oh, I see. I see.
Saturday night, Sunday.
Okay. I thought it
We
was like
ate
a self-pleasure
together,
marathon.
we slept together, and at any time during that retreat outside of a scheduled event, you were
Oh,
allowed to play with yourself, and I was allowed to watch.
wow. Yeah.
So that went on a lot of show off and a lot of voyeurism. To
Yeah.
see a bunch of guys playing with themselves was so freeing for me and each other.
And with this clear agreement that there was no contact, that this was, you had that intentionality and that agreement again.
That's right. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, and I'll mention that the personal retreats that I host, I do in my space. So I have an extra bedroom and they stay there, and I have my backyard. We do a lot of work in my backyard. We go to places around my home, and it works very well.
And how many hours is it?
I do 1 night or 2 nights. So, it's either, yeah, it's either.
And what would I do if I came for a personal?
Well, they're very individualized because it's a one-on-one, but we figure out the intention, we figure out what they're working to shift in their life, and then we go through a process where I'm working with various modalities from ritual. There's usually at least 1 or 2 rituals, ceremonies that take place, lots of coaching, guided meditation, NLP and timeline therapy work. So it's what I love about it is an opportunity for me to bring all the tools in my tool belt to the table. I think as a coach, that's one of the benefits of doing retreats is often when we're working with our clients, we have an hour, or an hour and a half or 45 minutes or whatever on a weekly basis. And it's hard for us to go deeper during those timeframes sometimes.
Yeah.
And so retreats give us this opportunity to bring more tools to the table, have a deeper experience with the spaciousness that is allowed from the retreat container.
What do you do for food?
So for those, I'll go to Whole Foods and get some of those like prepared meals, or I'll just do something really simple and I have it set up. And then we usually do at least 1 meal where we go out to eat, and I have that in my budget. Yeah.
Well, that's really interesting. You as a coach get to see them in an otherwise environment than what you're used to on the telephone.
Yeah, exactly. Some of these people I haven't met, I've just been with on Zoom, and then suddenly they're in my space. Yeah.
No, you're really doing something that is very easy in a way. You have a house, you have a backyard, you have a car,
Mm-hmm.
and people can really, I think, make a lot of advancement about what they're doing with their lives because the most valuable thing I think we can give to another person is our attention.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to come to your house and you're going to pay attention to me for 24 hours.
Mhm.
Like, what? This is like visiting God.
Mhm.
We're going to pay attention to you, and I'm going to flower and open up. It cannot not happen.
Hmm. Exactly. And it can be taxing, right? So we do
Absolutely.
definitely put in a lot of spaciousness, like time where they're just journaling, or I have to build that in because otherwise it
Yeah.
can be really challenging to give that much attention for that long. How do you determine what boundaries you have for the one-to-one, realizing this individualized, and how do you price out the one-to-one retreats? If you don't mind sharing the ranges. So my pricing is 3,500 currently, and it might go up because this is a new offering for me, but I do 3,500 for one night and 4,500 for 2 nights. And in terms of boundaries, um, to be honest, I haven't I haven't worked that, I haven't done a lot of practice around boundaries. I mean, I have my boundaries in the same way that I have boundaries with my clients who are not coming into my space. And I guess I maintain those. But yeah, I mean, that's something maybe I need to put some more thought around, is how I create boundaries. I'm certainly not I'm not a sacred intimate, so there isn't an erotic aspect to it, but there can be touch. I do Reiki. So it's really what their level of comfort is with the modalities that I'm offering. And
Yeah.
I suppose that's how I make the boundaries.
As a flip on that, when I started coaching, there was a famous woman in Texas, and if you hired her as your coach, she came to your house and spent the weekend.
Oh,
She wanted to see your closets and your
yeah.
kitchen floor and everything, right? And so everybody was so exposed. It's like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I can't keep anything from my coach.
Wow. Wow, that's intense.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure we do some of this logistics stuff too, because I know that it can be a deterrent for folks who are thinking about producing a retreat. They think, or how do I get people there? How do I figure out the pricing? How do I figure out the logistics? Right. So mostly we've been talking about some of the, more I don't know, floaty, like love magic stuff. But let's talk about the nitty-gritty stuff. So yeah, why don't we start with filling it? Because if you don't have the people there, then it's us
Well,
sitting
the,
on the beach.
the first thing I do is, if you have a client who is a musician or an actor who wants to do a one-man show, or you're a coach who wants to do a retreat, hire the hall. That's the first thing you do. Pick a date, June the 1st to June the 8th, put your money down, and then you will have to work your ass off to get somebody to come.
Mhm.
That's the push
Yep.
I found I needed to. The first thing I did was that. And then uh, about so Michael is probably in a situation where that cost is figured out, for the whole thing, rather than if you were doing it by yourself. But really, in the same way that you charge so much an hour for your coaching, you just figure out, like Will did, well, how much is it going to be for 24 hours? And you may not even have to want to do that. You may do a 3-hour event if there's people close to you in your town or
Yeah, I
in
do that as well, actually. Yeah.
did you? Okay.
Yeah.
How did you figure out the cost?
Well, so I often use the 3-hour event as a funnel. So I created a really accessible 3-hour event that then helps me bring them in as a more full-time client.
That's really good. Michael?
I've done a lot of one days, and I charge $375 to spend an hour with me. For $300, you can spend a whole day with me, and limited to 12 people. And I
Oh,
moved those
wow.
successfully to Zoom as well since COVID, and they're a lot of fun. And it ends up being $3,000 for the day on Zoom or in my living room or at a hotel meeting room, wherever we are. But I would think for pricing, yes, you should book the date, book the place, and someone had asked about how far in advance. We suggest 6 months to a year, depending on how big of a following you have. If you still have to do some list building, if you've got a strong following, you've got a lot of good clients that you've been coaching forever and they love you, to invite them to spend a week with you is a huge upgrade and gives you something else, a next level product to take back to your clients and build your business. And from there, they'll buy your next platinum level you might not have invented yet of a different kind of coaching or mastermind. But I would say the challenge with the good news that Harry just gave us is that it lights a fire under you to get going when you book the date and rent the hall. If you book a $15,000 contract to rent our place for 7 days, that's our basic wholesale price. We don't rent to the public. We only rent to retreat leaders. So you book 7 nights with airport transfers, with all of your meals, the whole thing turnkey. You don't have to arrange another thing.
Wow.
That includes copywriting, website design, all of that stuff is all provided as well if you need it. And you book that a year in advance with only a $3,000 deposit. Well, you want your what happens is people then go out and start rounding up their clients and find out that putting heads in beds is harder than they thought it would be. How do I do that? And so then you get worried about non-refundable deposits. So no, those contracts have to be a big part of it. So our contracts are fully refundable until 5 months prior, because it's less than that. It really gets hard for us to resell it to someone else. So you got to look at your contract and negotiate those things with the venue. And at that point, what do you do? And what if you want to hold, you're hoping to get 15 to 20 people, but your contract says, you're committing to 10 and you didn't get enough people to pay the early bird. You want those people paying the early bird prior to your deposits becoming due. So it's their money and it's non-refundable deposits you're selling. So there's a lot of little details that we want to list all of these and teach you how to do that. And then you're not risking your own money. You have your clients pay their non-refundable deposit, you forward it to your venue and move on. But if you've committed to 10 beds and you're hoping to get 20, a hotel is going to want you to put down a non-refundable deposit on those additional beds that you haven't sold yet. And then you start getting scared. So we're comfortable about 24 beds. So if you commit to 10, which is the $15,000, we give you all 24 beds so you can keep selling. And then it's a little bit discounted per person when you add on person 11 through 19. And once you get to 10 people, you and your team, you and your assistant, maybe 2 or 3 people hosting it, also come for free. There's no additional cost for them, and you get to bring on other people. So you don't have to worry about putting deposits and guaranteeing more beds. Those little nuances can make a difference of losing $10,000 on a retreat or making $10,000 on the retreat. All that money gets the surprise at the end. I keep hearing these horror stories over and over. It's like they worked so hard and then they had these unexpected expenses, or they didn't understand the contract. And we want this to be profitable. So knowing so we share spreadsheets on how to figure out your pricing. I would say I would never want anyone to do a week of work for free. And I think our standard is you need to make $200 net profit per person per day. So $200 per person per day. So on a 7-day retreat with a minimum of 10 people, you earn $14,000 after they pay all of your expenses. So your expenses include your airfare, your transfers, your meals, your tips, your phone charges, international, every last little detail is on the list. So you walk away and have that extra $14,000 in your bank after it's all over. And for 6 months work, filling it, you're still underpaid, but you had a lot of fun doing it.
Yes. And at Easton Mountain, we have people can rent our place, either half or whole. And we do everything we can to help you fill it.
And what's your minimum there? Can you just do that for a 1-night retreat, or is it 2 nights, 3 nights? What's your minimum?
Well, it depends on the time of the year.
Okay.
You couldn't do it in the summer because we're usually full, unless we do have rentals in the summer, but it would probably compare to your $15,000 price to rent it. Usually if for example, we have people who are just starting out in the business, we try to get them to enroll during an off season to start out, and for a 3-night, 4-day minimum, so they can build up their following. And often they don't make their goal, and we hate to cancel things because customers have booked airlines and everything. So we usually do it anyway.
Mhm.
Yeah. And like the Gay Coaches Alliance at offering the ability to teach workshops at our conference, we're at Easton, we're committed to giving newer people a chance to get into this business of leading retreats and doing workshops.
Mhm.
Yeah, excellent.
Excellent. Well, let's move into Q&A. Before we do, any other thoughts on putting heads in beds? Any other thoughts on marketing that have been effective for you guys?
Well, I think that the biggest factor of marketing is that we need to have a public life where people see us doing something other than marketing our retreats.
Mhm.
So I tell people, volunteer for the Red Cross, become the chairman of a campaign, do something, the Boy Scouts, or whatever it is, the Chamber of Commerce, and an organization that might suit your market. So in my case, it would be a gay organization if I were doing this, and really be visible so that they see you and they think, wow, that person has something. I think I'd like to hire him. I think it's much easier than the fact of having to market yourself.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would agree. I would add to that. It's like we do a lot of work on getting just the right sales copy and the perfect avatar, and knowing that and having designing the ideal retreat that stands out and is different than everyone else's in some way for your person. And yet advertising it and building your list doesn't, to me, doesn't work until you actually have to reach out to someone. I mean, nothing works like a phone call or a personal email to reach out and have a conversation with someone. You can't be afraid of that. So when you have your client list of people you've been working with for years and you design the perfect workshop for them, I think you have to call them and say, I just was thinking about you. This sounds so perfect for you. I think you're going to love this. And because you designed it for them. So
Yes,
they need you to call them and tell them and invite them.
being
And most
honest.
of them are people they'll say, they won't think you're a salesperson. They'll say, "Oh my God, I can't believe you thought of me. You really want to spend a week in paradise with little old me?" They're
Yes,
amazed. They love that.
yeah.
They do. But that works more than anything else. It's like you've got to reach out to your list and know
Yeah.
who it's for.
I agree. There's nothing beats that direct approach. And I'll share recently, I've had a couple wins just being a podcast guest on Rick Clemens' podcast. Actually, I got 2 people to sign up for my August retreat. So just putting yourself out there and putting the retreat out there. Also with social media, what I found is when I go to retreats and I talk about my experience at retreats, people then associate me with retreats. And so I've got folks there too. People are like, oh, I notice you're always at these spiritual retreats. And what's your deal? I'm like, yeah, I am. And do you want to do a retreat with me? So that's been a way that's worked for me as well.
So our member Kyle Elliott has a lot of ideas about how to get yourself out there every day based on social media as it is. When I did my first retreat, there was no social media.
Mhm.
I sent a letter to 250 people,
Love that.
and I wrote a message on each. It was a form letter, and I
Wow.
wrote a message, personal message, and that's how I got 14 people to come
Amazing. I love
in
that.
those days. Yeah. So talk to Kyle. I'm dropping an invitation. I hope he doesn't mind.
Good idea. I get Kyle to
Great.
help me.
Any questions from the group that have not been answered that you would like to have answered? You can put them in the chat or you can unmute yourself and go ahead and ask.
I just threw my link in there. I have 2 more beds available for our July 18th retreat. Mostly coaches. You're welcome to come. A couple of gay coaches coming.
I'm going to do the same, and people can check out how I'm advertising my personal retreats and my group retreat. And of course, folks are welcome too, but you can see how.
Did you design this retreat for me, Michael?
I did. I did. You were my avatar. No. So that feel free to anyone can look at that and look at the sales copy. You might, pick apart what we did. And you might look at it now after this conversation and say, well, I wonder why he said that, or I wonder why they used those pictures, or I wonder why they're talking about these things, or what we put together in there. That avatar it's mostly about the RIM training. And I would say 80%, like in the coaching world, 80% of our students are women over 50. It's like our avatar is Barbara. She's 51. She's been a life coach for a couple of years. So, but when the messaging doesn't say that it's for women or any of that, but it helped me get clear on how we talk about the feelings that most of our students have.
Hmm. One of the questions I think Alan asked was, are any books that we might recommend? I've been reading Retreat and Grow Rich, which is pretty good. It sort of has a very specific model that it preaches, but there's some good golden nuggets in there. Any other books? It looks like Michael might be going to get one from his bookcase. Harry, have you read any retreat books?
No, I haven't. It's Michael's in the ocean. What's he?
I was, but I walked right. I can walk on water. Here we are. So I'm reading Designing and Leading Life-Changing. Here we are, Life-Changing.
Oh, wow.
The
Cool.
textbook on events came out of
Designing and Leading Life-Changing Workshops, is that right?
Designing and Leading Life-Changing Workshops.
Cool.
There is a woman that trains people to do retreats. I can't think of her first name, but I believe her last name is Rosenthal. She's been around for quite a long while and has quite a reputation.
Hmm.
There was a very scathing article in the New York Times a couple of weeks ago about retreats in Bali and
Oh,
how people are going over there, lifestyle changing teachers and charging an enormous amount of money for retreats and behaving badly. And the Balinese people are noted for accepting outsiders and being very kind to them. But it was an eye-opening article about what we ought not to be doing.
Nice.
This is not the pot of gold where we're here to dive in and grab all the gold we can.
yes. Yeah. And we want to be mindful of the impact that we're having when we're bringing outsiders to these places.
Yeah.
And retreat, I have so many yoga teachers in some Facebook groups I belong to that we're talking about trauma-informed yoga. So in teaching a weekend workshop, so you can work with trauma clients on your retreats, and that is actually what led me to the Costa Rica experience, is that this is dangerous. Your 2-day workshop does not, that's different. I mean, trauma-informed as a yoga teacher to take a workshop, being with someone for an hour is very different than being with them, being responsible for their emotional and physical well-being for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in a foreign country. And so how we actually process that trauma is a different experience than being trauma-informed. So what does that mean? What does that look like? So we're working on creating something called the Retreat Leaders Academy. And meanwhile, we have a new pricing model to partner with people. Like if you have a following, you have years of clients under your belt that you love and would love to work with in a different experience, and you don't know how to pull it all together, but you've got a lot of talent to share, that you can partner with us to create that. And so I'm co-hosting and co-hosted several retreats last year, one like with a pharmacist group. I don't know anything about pharmacy business, but she brought her content and I was the fire for hire and created it into a magical retreat of what otherwise would have been at a Marriott.
Yes.
Right? So it was just magnificent, and all our people want to come back next year already. So there's lots of ways of learning and getting your feet wet, partnering with someone that knows how, and to still do so profitably.
And go to lots of retreats, see what's working.
Absolutely.
Great, cool. That's a cool opportunity. I found the one that I'm doing in August on Airbnb, and it's the hosts allow that kind of thing. They even have like a yoga studio in the house. So Airbnb and VRBO are also options. You can rent these big houses. You just want to let them know, that this is your intention.
Can I throw a warning on that? Because I rent a lot of Airbnbs.
Yeah, sure.
If I'm renting a new one, I'm only interested in renting from one that's in a professional management company. and a real investment. Because they can cancel their contract and all you get is your money back. And now you've got 10 people or whatever, 5 people coming for an expensive weekend and you have no place to put them and they cancel the contract 3 days before your event. I've had it really happen.
Oh,
That's how
my.
I learned those expensive mistakes. I
Yeah.
can rent something else real quick.
Sharing that. I'm glad
They're
not to
not,
know that
yeah, they're
my
not
run my
professional.
professional company. That's great. Gregor, I see your hand up, so feel free to unmute yourself. And then we're going to start wrapping up.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, I have a couple of questions actually. One about the financial sustainability of this model. I know, Mike, you had said, for that example, making, $14,000 netting or whatever, and then, but with factoring all of your planning time and leading up to it, like you're either breaking even or just having fun along the way. So I'm curious, like how the financial modeling works for you all, and looking at like how you make them affordable and accessible to people of different income categories, while also considering like your own needs as in planning these financially.
You want to take that, Mike?
Sure. So there is that balance, right? So if you price it, if your avatar can might afford or be willing to pay for a $3,000 retreat, but they may or may not be willing to pay for a $5,000 or $6,000 week, then pricing it determines whether you fill up or not. You have to find, finding that balance. If you price it out and you can't make your $200 per person per day and it's too expensive, then you're going to have to find a less expensive venue, right? Or a place that if you stay within the States, a hotel in Sarasota I do trainings here at my house a lot, and people stay in Sarasota at a hotel, and the hotel here for 5 nights is more expensive than 7 nights all inclusive in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
So it's worth a little higher airfare, right? And what's the appeal? Most people will suddenly have more money if it's something they really want to do. So is it something that's more appealing and been on their bucket list for a long time? So in finding something that's accessible, I get pushback that if you're doing a retreat at our place, your avatar needs to be able to pay really $3,500 per person for an all-inclusive 7 days, and you'll make your $14,000 on 10 people. And that's the minimum. Obviously, you would love to have 18 or 20 people so that you can double what you make on that. If you're getting 20 people, you're probably having a partner to share it with, though, so you're back to making 14. But it's a lot easier on splitting the responsibility and all of that. Retreats are not usually, these types of retreats are not for people without some means, right? Day retreats and online retreats, and there are lots of weekend retreats that are very affordable. And no matter how affordable you make it, there's always someone else we really want to help who has no money, and they just can't buy that retreat. And so we have to get comfortable with who we're serving and how and where. I'm very comfortable making a lot of money over here, and I do a lot of pro bono services over there, and I can't make my high-end thing over here affordable to the person over there. So we do wrestle with that. I'm happy to share our spreadsheets and show how we price it all out so that you count as an expense, so that you get your profit. You are an expense. You get paid just like the hotel gets paid, and that's all gets calculated into the pricing. And then is that well, yeah, it's very profitable if you can make more than that. Depends on how in demand are you, how much do your clients love you, how much money do they have. It's always good to keep some wealthy clients on your roster, right? And to have something more to sell them, right?
Yeah, exactly. Often with retreats, we're also looking at how this is a stepping point to a longer term relationship, a bigger package. And then just to note that Easton Mountains model, and one that I'm borrowing with my retreat, is for accessibility purposes, creating volunteer opportunities. So if someone's not able to afford the price of the retreat, they might be able to come for a lower price, but be responsible for some of the necessities of the retreat. Great. We need to wrap it up. I thought we'd end early, but clearly we had a lot to talk about. So we are getting at the half hour. So if folks want to share any takeaways, or perhaps actually, let's make it a little even easier than that. What word would embody what you're leaving with? How are you feeling, or something that you're grateful for? But just add a word to the chat, or you can unmute yourself and speak up. I'm going to put us into and I just want to thank Harry and Mike for doing this as we're looking at some of these words. And I'll put you guys back into the group and remove my spotlight. World class, informed, possibilities, inspired, motivated. Awesome. These are great words. Thank you all so much for being here. It was a total delight. And we'll look forward to seeing you at the next Gay Coaches Alliance call next month.
Look at you landing the plane exactly on time.
Hey,
Well done. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for doing it.
thank you, Will.
Thank you, Harry. Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.